Joining us now to discuss, Denise Gitsham, NewsNation contributor, Republican strategist, and former aide to President George W. Bush. What a pleasure it always is, Denise. Great to have you. And I'm excited for this conversation because we've talked about this so many times. What is central in these elections is the economy, and it's taking center stage this time. He's talking about the president, these rising costs to farmers. He's acting as if he understands their challenges. But he's also been making this argument, Denise, that Democrats have been making up an affordability crisis. So I'm curious your thoughts on his strategy and his messaging. Is he making the case to the American people that, hey, vote Republican and we can turn this ship around? Is he doing that effectively?
No, he's not. Certainly not effectively enough to have an impact on the midterms unless things actually start to come down, prices actually start to plummet. Look, I still believe in the president's ability to bring prices down. I still remember that just a few months ago, we had the lowest gas prices in 4 years under this president because of his slashing of regulations and all he's done to boost output from America in terms of oil production. However, I have to caution the president not to gaslight Americans the way President Biden did, because we saw exactly what it did in November of 2024. So to the president, I would say, stop declaring victory when millions of Americans still feel like they're losing, because every time you celebrate another economic statistic, while families are struggling to make ends meet, it widens that credibility gap between the people who are running the country and the people who are paying the bills. And everyone asks, who exactly is benefiting from this economy? Because it sure doesn't feel like me.
Right. And we had two very different stories, even this week, economic stories, that strong jobs report. But then you had the market dipping. And it seemed like it was over these concerns of higher for longer interest rates, potentially also anticipating massive cuts in the workforce with AI's continued rollout. The president, he appeared frustrated by the reaction because those numbers were good. What does he need to do and message to make consumers confident, make them feel like this is a good time to be doing business?
Yeah, I don't think there's much that he can do other than end this war. There's nothing he can do. And he needs to keep making the case that, this price situation, this affordability crisis that all Americans are dealing with, yes, it's coming at a price to Americans, but it's for a purpose. And, every generation has been asked to sacrifice something. And, the greatest generation was asked to sacrifice their lives for freedom. In this case, we're asking Americans, I say we as a Republican, but the president's asking Americans to sacrifice the cost of things, what things cost in their regular everyday lives, to do something that's really existentially important to the long-term national security of not only our nation, but the world. And I just think that sometimes he wants to gloss over to the win, which hasn't been experienced or realized by anybody yet. And he jumps to obtuse numbers. Like, nobody cares about a jobs report number. That's like a government statistic that has no bearing on anyone's actual life. All that we see is ever rising grocery bills and gas prices. So he needs to keep making a strong case for why the thing that's causing this huge pain on Americans, that's inflicting this pain, is worth the squeeze, right? The juice is worth the squeeze. And I just think that when he goes back and forth between declaring victory and saying, you just need to get behind me, and not really explaining what it's all for, we just lose the plot. And the plot is important, right? Nobody wants to see Iran with a nuclear weapon, and yet we're just not making that case. We keep getting distracted in the messaging, and message discipline is everything when so much is at stake.
Well, and what is the tolerance of the American people for a mission like this? Because we heard a similar narrative about the tariffs as well. He's been making that case. But I wanted to ask you also, Denise, about your stomping grounds in California. Very interesting. I know. I'm excited to pick your brain on this one, because the big question, can Republicans pull this out. Many are skeptical that will be the end of this story. You do have a different system out there where the top two candidates, regardless of party, win, they move on. There seems to be this agreement, though, that if these races focus on local issues, Republicans have a much better shot. If they become a referendum on the president, it's going to seal the deal absolutely for Democrats. Do you see, though, Denise, the results of these primaries serving in any way as a bellwether for the midterms? So many are trying to read in between the lines. Are there any transferable data points you've identified?
Well, the reality is every race always boils down to who it is on the ticket, right? Like the reason we're even talking about an LA mayor race is because Spencer Pratt's actually interesting. Like whether you like him or not, and I happen to love his campaign, it's so much fun to watch. And so people are energized because it's interesting, it's new. And I would say that there's an opportunity in California that might not exist elsewhere simply because Californians are recognizing that as we talk about record high prices nationally on gas, we look at it and we're like, we would kill for the average price of gas in the rest of the country. Suddenly, Californians are asking, why are we paying so much compared to the rest of the nation, right? This affordability crisis actually helps highlight that Democrats who've been in charge of our state for the last 16 years can only blame themselves for the affordability crisis, for the highest poverty rate in the nation and the most technologically advanced state in the nation. So 57% of Californians say the state is headed in the wrong direction. And in a state where Democrats outnumber Republicans nearly 2-1, that's not a partisan talking point. That is a straight up voter verdict.
Right. Well, we'll see how many voters these Republican candidates can convert. But
I hope so many. I pray to God.
Well, it is always fun to get your take and pick your brain. Denise Gitsham, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.